Ladies and gentlemen, one and all, welcome to this very special occasion, and as you can see, a slightly different setup. We're in the media studio today for a very special occasion, and that is officially the launch of my self-titled album, which I recorded back in 2013, early 2014, but never released. Actually sat on it and kept it, locked away for such a long time. But because of the very nice encouragement from you fine people, but also from my very close friends and family and stuff, we finally decided to get it out there and just let everyone have a listen. And today's video is going to be all about, I'm going to go into depth, quite in depth with all of the different tracks. Because one of my favourite things when I was younger is you used to get CDs. Any of you are old enough to remember those CDs back in the day, or even vinyl, and you could open up and actually there'd be like notes telling you about each track and who played on it and stuff. And I used to love that. So we're just going to go through that today, just for those of you who are interested in about my actual, personal, heartfelt music and art, darling, because it's serious for me. But I'm going to be very open and honest and, and emotional, man, because it's genuine. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you want to continue to support, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening. We've got my school, my method, is going live on November the 1st. Link in the description, you can subscribe to that, and when it goes live, a lot of the stuff on this album I will eventually upload, explanations and breakdowns and technical stuff in that, along with everything else from alternate picking to the gypsy jazz stuff to composition and all that. So all of the different things, and I'll talk about all my other accolades. But again, a very big thank you to you, the listener and audience, and a lot of big thanks to my close friends, family. But I'll go into depth at the end and give a big list of thank yous for everyone. So a quick overview and just an explanation of how the album came about. So in 2013, I guess I'd worked very hard as a professional musician, session musician, touring musician. And I was quite burnt out, but I did have the idea for this solo project, and it was Adrian Vandenberg, a friend of mine. You guys all know him from Whitesnake and obviously Vandenberg. And it was his idea because he and I were very close, and he was very much into the gypsy jazz sort of style and acoustic music in general. And he did say to me, "Man, you just got to do your album, man. Do your own album, get all your heroes to play on it, man, and just give your best and get it out there." And I was like, "Oh, do you know what? I will," because he was the one who gave me the motivation to do it. And then as we were actually recording, I said, "Come on, Adrian, come on, you've got to play a solo on it." And his actual he was like, I ain't playing any of that shit, man. I got to get my shit together, man. I ain't doing any of that." And so he proper, not wimped out of it. He was just like, "I ain't doing any of that shit. No, forget it." And I was like, "Oh, that's brilliant." So he gave me the fire to do it, and then didn't actually appear on it. But I will get him one day. I'll force him to play on the electric one that's going to be next year, hopefully. But anyway, just a quick overview of it is it's going to be very different to probably what you're expecting, because obviously with me coming back to guitar and music this last year, playing a lot of electric, shred stuff and over-the-top technical stuff. And then when you realise that this album's 99% acoustic, you're probably a bit surprised. However, it does have some savage shred moments on there, and as you'll see with some of the guests, some of the most technical players in the world, etc., etc. But it is rooted in melody, composition, which makes it slightly different to the style I was playing at the time quite heavily, which was gypsy jazz performance, and just acoustic in general. So I kind of twisted it a little bit and made it a bit more of a traditional songs with verses and choruses and bridges, middle eights and all that type of stuff, just to make the style that I loved so much a bit more accessible for the normal person rather than the full-on jazzer. But that was the ethos behind it. So a lot of it is over-the-top playing for the sake of it, You got to do a bit of that. But also, as you'll see, when I try and go through each track individually shortly, a lot of them are very deep, personal, and heartfelt. No pun intended. But I'll do my best to get through all the explanations. But again, thank you so much for listening. So let's get on with it. Okay, so tracks 1 and 2, I'd Give Anything and The Heart of Elann, were originally a singular track just titled The Heart of Elann, but I broke it into 2 sections just because I was worried that it ended up being an absolute epic, like 9 minutes long or something. I can't remember exactly, but I didn't want it to end up getting lost, that, you know, people wouldn't necessarily sit through the whole thing, so we did break it into 2. But I'll talk about it as a singular track because it's possibly my most important composition, if you like, that I've ever done, and I'm probably I'm gonna do my best, okay, because to try and get through the explanation of it and not get emotional, because let's be honest, I'm hard as nails here, but I'll do my best. But it is a very emotional track, and I'll just give you a little bit of a backstory about it. So, it's the first movement of it, the I'd Give Anything, is a singular acoustic, very emotive, based around cycle of fourths, very traditional kind of jazz performance, in the vein of Jimmy Rosenberg, Stockel Rosenberg, any of the you know, Borelli Legren, that kind of performance. Again, based around the kind of classical movements and jazz of the cycle of fourths, autumn leaves. You'll know what I mean. And at the time, I did used to think I'd give anything to play like Jimmy Rosenberg. And that's what it started with, was the cycle of fourths. But as I was developing it, and I came up with this kind of pattern and, structure, more compositional, a song-like structure with that groove of The Heart of Elann, it did become a proper mammoth undertaking with melodies. And a good friend of mine, Sammy Sauler, monstrous musician, but also incredibly multi-talented as a person, was not only a phenomenal jazz musician and percussionist, but was an acrobat in the Cirque du Soleil. Crazy, I know, what a story. So he was helping me with some percussion and the potential of some orchestration. But also his son at the time was very, very unwell and had a major heart condition, and his name, Elann. Good news is he's a lot better nowadays, a very strong young man and stuff, but at the time was in a very bad way. And again, as I was writing, the connection came, from Sammy helping me, but also, it's hard to explain I kind of, as I was writing, kind of put my feelings into the song, of starting with the whole I'd give anything, like any parent would when you're seeing a child, really suffer, and you think I'd give anything to swap place or take it away, etc., etc. So it became from that, and as you'll listen to it now with that in your mind, you can hear that the chordal structure, especially the first initial chords of I'd Give Anything, where you've got a very melodic minor-esque sort of sound with the transition between the chords. You can hear that kind of sense of longing and a bit of adversity and anxiety. And then when it goes into the actual track, a huge sort of crescendo and a drop in the middle. And you've got a very, very emotional journey, if you like, which is the journey of a parent, isn't it? Or anyone suffering, having to endure watching someone suffering with an illness, because and a lot of the time it's harder to, be the person supporting as well. I've known a lot of people with the illness and have said it's sometimes worse for the family than the individual. It's just open to interpretation. Anyway, I don't want to ramble too much, but as we were writing and helping with the orchestration, I still remember the highlight of it. Elann, at one point, very unwell, ended up doing a bit better, and his dad was orchestrating and helping, and at the time turned round and Elann was actually dancing to the track, the soundtrack, while we were in the process of orchestrating. And it's still one of the highlights of my life, that seeing his progress and him doing a bit better, considering we were all, really worried. But anyway, so I ended up titling the second track The Heart of Elann, as you can see, because his name's Elann Sauler, and it was obviously his heart, which I'm thankful to say, is strong as hell right now. So great news. But another couple of things about the track is it's got an incredibly special guest on there, and that's a hero of mine, Brett Garsed, ladies and gentlemen. One of the most phenomenal guitarists ever, but again, a little out of what he'd normally do, because he's, you know, primarily an electric player, very legato-esque player, you know, Alan Holdsworth kind of thing, but had a very rock edge. And I did, while I was recording, I just reached out, again, because, you know, Adrian was like, yeah, get a load of heroes on there. So, and I had known Brett, I'd met him before, I think at trade shows, but I did reach out and I just said, look, would you be interested? Would you play on this? And I sent it to him. And he did come back, he was like, absolutely. But, you know, it is a bit difficult. You might have to, you know, tweak it a little bit and turn it up, because I am a legato guy and all that type of stuff, which he's being very modest. He's an everything guy. He's a monstrous player. But yeah, I got the track back, imported it in, and then I accompanied on the way out of the solo back into the melody, and it just worked perfect. And again, I love his improvisational section over the middle section where everything comes down dynamically and then builds up to the outro. So again, monstrous track for myself personally. I do find it hard to listen to sometimes, just because of the emotions behind it. And but I'm very proud of it. And on the album, I think it's the first two I think are my favourite, just of what I've done, because it has everything. Solo acoustic, totally bare, naked, bare in your soul, and it ends up with a full-on monstrous layered acoustics, big massive bass, percussion, and orchestra behind me, but yet comes down and ends with the same sort of chords and progression at the end. I got through it. That's my long explanation of those two songs, I'd Give Anything and The Heart of Elann. So please have a listen to those two tracks now, and I hope you enjoy. Right, come on, we're getting into it now. Hypertension, ladies and gentlemen, featuring the almighty Mr. Paul Gilbert. And again, a very proud moment of my life having him guest with me on this track. Let me just explain a little bit about the track. So, it's a very over-the-top, technical for the sake of being technical track. And there are a lot of inspirations behind it, and I will explain some of those in the future, because again, not what you might think. But I'd always loved the songs from like the very up-tempo gypsy jazz jams, and you had like, you know, Stockler. There's videos of like Stockler, Jimmy Rosenberg playing together, playing a song called Joseph, very up-tempo, and it's just wall-to-wall shredding. When they all get really hyped up and happy, and they've had a couple of beers, couple of sherbets, you know what I mean? They go crazy, and it's just endless 16th notes, you know, and it's just, it really is a what's the right term for, you know, swinging, you know, who's got the biggest, who's the most manliest, you know, it's one of those. It's a proper measuring contest with those guys. And obviously I'd done a lot of studying and a lot of playing in those circles, had a lot of the technique. But to be honest, the true inspiration, I remember hearing of a song. Someone told me, there's a song, Aldi Meola and Steve Vai have done a song together called Race. I think it's Race with the Devil on a Spanish Highway. I'm sure that's right, something like that. I remember just hearing, wow, that's going to be amazing. And I remember hearing it, and it was good. It just wasn't what I had in my mind. I don't know, for some reason I wanted it to be a lot more intense and a lot more full on, where they're both just going berserk all the way through. But they didn't. They were a lot more like restrained, you know, from my point of view. So in a way, I wrote my own, and I thought I'm just going to go crazy on this one and just make the most ridiculous, over the top, hardest playing, just from start to finish, everything pretty much 16ths. With a bit of melody in there. There is a melody, sort of. You can hum it. Chris was humming it before. So there is a melody in there. But let's be honest, for the most part, it's just an absolute shredathon. And again, I was thinking, who can I ask to play on it? And I was like, right, I've got to do it, because Paul Gilbert had been a huge influence, inspiration from a very young age. And again, he's a monstrous musician, composer, songwriter, singer. He's everything. But let's be honest, he's a monster shredder as well, isn't he? You know, he's one of the most badass, over-the-top guys ever. So I reached out, and again, I'd known him for a little while. We'd met several times, but I did reach out, and I was just like, I hope you remember me, but you know, here's where I am currently, and I'm playing with these artists, whatever, but I'm doing this song, and I'd love you to play on it with me, acoustic, a little bit different from what you're doing, but what do you think? And he did, and again, he was like, okay, no problem, yeah, come on, let's have it, because he just does it. He was like, yeah, I'll do it, and I love it. Again, it's full-on intensity from start to finish, pretty much. Hence the title, Hypertension. But last thing with it is, any Frank Gambale fans out there? Do you remember? Do you remember he did a thing? Rick Graham and we talk about it a lot, because he is a huge Frank Gambale fan. But Frank Gambale did a thing that he called the lick that slurped LA. And he just did this endless, you know, just starting low and flying all the way up the neck, just continuous 16ths with his economy picking huge arpeggios. And again, I couldn't play it, but I was like, I could, because you can't, on that style, it's just, if you try and do any kind of sweeps or legato or anything like that, you just can't hear anything, because the gypsy thing is very much alternate rest stroke and battering the hell out of the guitar. But I'm like, I could do my own lick that slurped LA, but I want it to be, this is the lick that punched you in the face, or the lick that, you know, like I don't know, you know, something like that. I just was like, I want it to be a lot more aggressive and full on. So that's exactly what happens towards the end of the song. I just do this monstrous phrase over the chord changes. You know, we've got like E and B flat, and it's very, very, you know, tritone. It's very, very bizarre, but James Horner inspired, would you believe? But I fly through this monstrous arpeggio and then basically finish with the intro, which is mental as well. And it's just, even now, like recently relearning it, I'm like, I'm kicking my own ass. Like, what is going on? How the hell did I play that? But again, a huge proud moment for the track. myself, when you listen in the middle, we got myself and Paul Gilbert. Paul Gilbert kind of over on the left, that side for you, with his nylon string acoustic, again, being Paul Gilbert, shredding it all over the place. And again, we build it to a peak, come to the end, punch you in the face, and that's what it's all about. So Hypertension, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoy. Right. Again, I'm going to say now, this is an incredibly proud moment for me, this track, but I think I'm going to say that about all of them pretty much. But this track, so Slip a Disc, a little bit sacrilegious for the Gypsy Jazz guys. I just want to give a heartfelt no apology, all right? It's what I did with it, I stand by it. So it's a very upbeat, two-beat Gypsy Jazz kind of groove with a melody and just a load of shredding and improv and kind of like Jimmy Rosenberg. Let me explain myself. But I did the thing where instead of having a full-on Gypsy Jazz rhythm section, because I just couldn't do it, we ended up I did the majority of everything myself. I had my good buddy Derek Jones, what a legend. I'll talk about him at the end when I just go through the list of extra musicians who helped me realise the project. But I reached out. I wanted to do a modern day. There was a band, Caravan Palace, who kind of did the old jazz standards, but with a real up-tempo kind of like dance vibe. Oh, dance. I don't know, just a huge sound and driving beat, for the modern era. So that's exactly what we did. And I reached out to an absolute legend, Stian Carstensen. Legend, phenomenal musician, and still now he terrifies me, his capabilities. Accordionist, multi-instrumentalist. But there's an album, Jimmy Rosenberg and Stian, called Rose Room, and it's pretty much a live album. They came together and played these songs, and it's still now the most terrifying album I've ever heard. It gets a lot of normal people won't be accessible to it because they'll see it as a weird thing, like an acoustic and an accordion. Very sort of like French Parisian. They don't, most people who are into Metallica won't necessarily relate. But it's a shame because if they did, they realise possibly the greatest guitar playing and just playing in general from Stian with his accordion. It's phenomenal. And again, going back to the original, at the time, I'm like, I'd give anything to play I'd give anything to be with, play with Stian. And I'd almost ran into him at a festival, but I was too scared in my younger years. So I reached out again. I had his contact details and I explained who I was and what I was doing. And again, he was so gracious. He was like, absolutely, I'll play on that. And so I got to live the dream of kind of being a little bit Jimmy Rosenberg-esque. I'd never compare myself to Jimmy, but I was like, I want to kind of play as fast and as mental as he's doing and trade with Stian, and that's exactly what we did. And inadvertently, on the one hand, it's a dream come true. On the other hand, I cringe a little because I know all of the Gypsy Jazz audience, probably hated me for it, or will hate me for it. When they hear it, they'll think it's sacrilege. But ironically, most normal people have told me, the guy, close friends, family, people who I've let hear it, they love it. Like, you wouldn't believe it. Like, Rick Graham, it's his favourite track, on the album, apart from the bonus track at the end. But he's like, this is my favorite. He just loves it, and he loves the drive of it, but also it is pretty crazy, the technique involved to play the solos. Again, I kick my own ass, but I'll delve into it in my online method, darlings. So, big thank you to Stian for joining me, and again, I hope for much more collaborations in the future because he is an absolute god, an Elvis in the jazz world, and just the world in general. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoy it. It should put a smile on your face. Slip a Disc. All right, we've got a sort of interlude now from all the big, massive sounds on the album. You've got just 2 guitars, both me, incidentally. But it's the Storm movement from Summer, the Four Seasons by Antonio Vivaldi. And a quick story behind this. I'd been in a professional band, gypsy jazz band, if you like, performance band, with a monstrous talent, Ben Holder, ladies and gentlemen, violinist extraordinaire. And we'd done, because it was a big show, but we had in it like an interlude where we both played this, Storm. And he'd play the violin, and I'd accompany, and it was an absolute nightmare to try and keep up with the violin, which is, obviously has all of the legato capabilities with the long drawn bows as well as the staccato and the sustain and the volume. Whereas with me, with my pick and my little steel strings, it was an absolute nightmare. But I did love the arrangement we kind of came up with, because it's kind of an interpretation. It's pretty loyal, but a little bit different, to make it 2 guitars. And at the time, I don't think, because it has been done to death, everyone's done a version of it, and you get all kinds of modern day things on cello and all that, and the guys with long hair making it cool and all that type of stuff. But I was like, I just want to do it with 2 guitars and see how it sounds. And again, push myself a little bit, because it's a bitch to play on an acoustic. And I really like it. I think it's quite cool and quite energetic, and it's a testament to the genius that is Antonio Vivaldi. So I hope you love it, crank it, and again, I look forward to hopefully performing it again at some point in the future. I've just got to find another crazy guitarist to do the other part with me, but there's plenty out there, let's be honest. Anyway, Storm, hope you enjoy. Okay, after that onslaught of notes and technical prowess, we have Reunited, very, very simple acoustic melody. I'm not going to go over the top on this one because it's incredibly emotional for me. But the point behind it is Reunited is what we all want in it. Anyone who's lost a loved one and all that, we dream to be one day reunited and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to go into it because I have to maintain the image of being hard as nails and all that. But Yeah, very, very simple melody. And again, what I love about it, my favorite thing is the dynamic in the middle. Again, lifts up quite a lot, comes down, but then towards the end, I harmonize with myself, and it's that kind of that end melody where you've got harmony, and it is the Reunited, where there's finally the two melodies together playing the same. But I don't want to keep going on about it. Anyway, Reunited. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so now we have another kind of interlude, and I wasn't originally going to put it on the album back in the day. I recorded it because it was important to go into this song, All I Have, the following track. But I've just figured, why not? I'll just put it out anyway. Who cares? And, you know, you can always skip over it. But it's Django Reinhardt's Improvisation #1. So there's a couple of reasons behind it. I was learning it as best as I could from a lot of different, you know, interpretations. But the fact of the matter was, it was a challenge to myself because the way Django played was just unfathomable, well, still is to most guitarists, because he had a specific kind of like disability, if you like, where he only had the 2 fingers and these ones were fused and stuff. He came up with a lot of interesting approaches, scalar choices, chordal choices, where you've got all the major and minor 6 and the diminished and the whole tone and all that type of stuff. Monstrously advanced ahead of his time. Everyone knows this now, it's not a secret. The beauty of the internet, ladies and gentlemen. But I'd been learning the track because I wanted to perform it in our live show, to give a little bit of the history and to kind of show the guitarists and just the musicians. I'm like, do you realize this was performed in 1937, I believe, probably with a button as a pick? And you listen to it now, the original recording, which you can just hear on Spotify. You're just like, what the hell? And it's, the legend has it, it was kind of a sound check when he was recording a lot of his songs, and he improvised the whole thing. And again, I maintain he would have had certain sections are, you know, kind of structured and melodies, but you can hear him kind of creating it as he goes and just going through different movements there. And it was a phenomenal piece of music. Can go over a lot of people's heads because it is jazz, isn't it? But I was very, very inspired by that performance. And the strange thing is, towards the end, there's one phrase which is like a sweep. He flies right the way up a B minor arpeggio, landing on the 9, and then plays a minor 6 add 9 at the end. Listen, that's proper geek stuff, isn't it? But that chord led me to then kind of going into composing the following song, All I Have. And as you'll hear in the end of that song, I reference the Django phrase at the end of that song as well. So again, I just unapologetically, I'm putting it out there so you can hear the inspiration to then move into the next song. But it is kind of a jazz performance, if you like. And a bit of at the time, I guess I was flexing, wasn't I, to try and play? Because everyone in the gypsy jazz world, they were like, it's the hardest song ever written, man. Hardest thing to perform. Which it is. It's a bitch. It's an absolute nightmare. Rest, stroke, alternate picking all over the place. Weird phrases. And just, it's a nightmare. But that's the story behind it. And all hail King Django Reinhardt, who without him, we wouldn't have Metallica. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Okay, all I have, probably, if I'm being honest, self-critical, etc. I think it might be my best work as a composition on the album, probably. And I want to say it's not that it's my favourite. I think the Heart of Elann and the first two tracks are my favourite because they're so close to me. But I think when it comes to an actual composition and a melody performance, All I Have is the best I have to offer. It was at the time, hence why I call it All I Have. It's literally the best from point of view of compositional and expression, darling. It was all I had to offer. But very much, like I said previously, inspired by Django's improvisation. Just that phrase at the end led me to come up with this. But I'd had a great relationship. I still do. I had a great relationship with the legend that is Hank Marvin. Even though modern day era, younger players might not know who he is, even though they're like Hank Marvin, that means you're really hungry, doesn't it? Rhyming slang. Hank Marvin. But he's an absolute legend, pioneer, musician, guitarist, instrumentalist from the Shadows. Everyone will know Apache, or the Deer Hunter, who's famous with that. And the pioneer of the Stratocaster. I believe he was the first guy in the UK to really push the Fender Stratocaster back then. But went on to really, obviously he took over the world and inspired players like Mark Knopfler, who still classes Hank Marvin. It was his favourite guitarist, and you can hear such influence. Jeff Beck, guys like that look to Hank Marvin. So look at the correlation of these players who've been inspired. But I had a great thing where I would yearly go to the Samoa-Stian Django Reinhardt festival, which is where I met Adrian, whose idea this whole thing was. But luckily enough, got to meet Hank Marvin there, and again, just so gracious because I was reasonably proficient at the style at the time, and that's what you realise with these guys who are really world-class players and icons. A lot of the time, they have zero ego at all. They don't care. And a lot of the time, Hank was so cool. He was just like, I'm just glad I didn't get found out, Incredibly humble guy. But he was really interested in the style, and he and I would actually sit and jam, and we'd talk about it, and I'd show him some things, he'd show me something. And we developed just a real good, friendly relationship, even though after the initial me going, oh my God, I can't believe this, and my dad, who would come with me, he was like, I can't believe we're sat with Hank Marvin here, this is weird. We've got a photo of myself, Hank Marvin, and Adrian Vanderberg, although all you can see from Adrian is the back of his head, but we're jamming and playing Django music. And that's where the relationship started anyway. But when I was doing this track, and again, my most sort of proudest composition for the album, melodically speaking, I just thought, oh God, this is a nightmare. And again, Aaron, my producer at the time, I was just like, I might email Hank and just see if he'll play on it. He won't play on it. He's a legend. Oh God, I may as well ask anyway. And he came straight back saying, absolutely, no problem, and I'll absorb all my own, studio costs. Don't worry about it. And still now, it's again one of the most humbling moments of my life where I'm like, this legend is willing to do this and play on this. And it is a shame, when I think about it, all the stuff I did for this album, I ended up never releasing it. But hey, I'm doing it now. So again, thank you so much, Hank. And very, very proud moment. And you can hear his, again, beautiful, emotive solo in the middle section, and then I come back in, we go back to the melody, lifting it up, and we've got everything on there, beautiful vocals underneath as well. And it's a very proud moment for me, compositionally speaking. So All I Have, I hope you enjoy it. Right, after all of that emotional playing, let's get full on here, and we've got Off With His Hands, which is very Greek-inspired shred fest, featuring the almighty monster that is Mr. Michael Paouris, bouzouki player extraordinaire. And again, incredibly proud moment to, well, just try and keep up with the nutcase playing his bouzouki at 100 million miles an hour. But I just tried my best to hold my own, to be honest. But I had this kind of Greek groove, because I'd used to play, like, you know, Zorba the Greek and stuff, and end up playing those major thirds and stuff really fast. And I just came up with this kind of melody. And again, I'd known of Michael and had seen him because he was playing with Andy Miller at the time. And he's a gypsy jazz player, you know, a very, 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 very good gypsy jazz player. And we'd kind of crossed paths here and there. But again, I just messaged him. I sent him the track, and I was like, "Look, would you be willing to play a bit of bouzouki on this?" And again, he was like, "Absolutely, let's do it." And I remember even saying to him, I was like, "You just do your thing, go absolutely crazy on it, and just kick my ass all over the place, and I'll just do my best to keep up." And I did. I said to him at the end, I have this kind of very long descending phrase. It's not just sixteenths coming down. There's a bit of up and down all over the place. Very, very difficult. I'd love it if you'd harmonise that, but it's okay if it's too much or whatever. And he didn't even acknowledge that in the email. And then when he sent me the track, it was just he'd done it note for note, and it easy for him. And I was just like, oh, that's depressing. I was hoping he'd at least try and ask me to explain it to him a little bit, but he didn't. He just listened to it and played it, and like that, so it made me feel a little bit inferior and proud at the same time. And there we go. So just a monstrous Greek-inspired shred fest for the sake of it. And do I apologise? No. I hope you enjoy. And it's the reason I call it that is because it's that thing that used to be shouted back in those days, isn't it? When I think of Michael Paouris, I think, "Off with his hands." You still here? Anyone still here? You still listening? Still watching this video? Come on. What's going on? Thank you for the 3 people still watching and listening. We're coming to the winding down here, coming to the end, and we have again. How many times have I said it? Most proud moment for me, but we have the song "Indefinite." I am very proud of this one because, to be honest, while I was writing for the album, I did realise I'm like most of this is pretty miserable and depressing and in a minor key for the most part, and even Reunited, which is technically in a major key, is still sad as hell. So I was like, I need to just have something that's a little bit optimistic, you know, and in a major key, so to speak, mixed modal major key. But I just wrote it as a bit more because I'd done a lot of folk music as well, played a lot of the pentangle stuff and the Irish bands and stuff, and the Irish the jigs, the up-tempo, happy, optimistic music. And so I wrote my own, but made it heavy as hell, badass, drop D, you know, and again played it on the traditional acoustic, Taylor acoustic, and then melodies on the gypsy. But I just thought there was a part in it when it comes to the improvisational sort of solo section where I blatantly ripped off a little progression from a Harem Scarum song, which for any of you those of you who are unfamiliar, Harem Scarum, probably one of my most favourite bands ever, possibly the most influential band. But the guitarist and composer songwriter Pete Lesperance is he's pretty much my biggest influence and biggest hero. And again, I was just Aaron was like, just message him and ask him to play on it, and I'm like, oh, you'll say no. And again, we'd already corresponded a few times, and he'd always been very friendly and nice and complimentary and stuff. So I thought, oh God, you know that thing. Again, the amazing philosopher once said, do you know what happens if you don't take a chance? Nothing. As Mel Gibson said that. And it had a profound effect on me, that the words of wisdom. And I thought, oh, come on then. And I just reached out and said, would you play on it? And again, he did. And not only that, he did it in an afternoon pretty much. He listened to the track and he just performed his solo and set it on. I was just like, that is just brilliant. And again, I worked around it and incorporated it. And I'm so proud to just have him there with me. And again, it's an uplifting song and an uplifting dynamic after the solo, coming all the way up and smashing you in the face with optimism. And again, the title Indefinite, just meaning my love of music and love of the instrument is indefinite. And I hope you enjoy. Right, we're at the end. Thank you so much for bearing with me. We have a proper cover song at the end here. Little bit of an interpretation to start with, an intro. I did actually originally call it The Road to Kashmir, and it was just like a nod towards the song. And for a laugh, while we were in the studio, Aaron, the producer, and I, we were just like, let's just do Kashmir, come on. And my initial thought was I'd get Ben in on violin to do like a real, dirty violin melody over the top. And then I think we were just like, let's just do it. It'd be a good contrast to go from being acoustic all the way through, starting the album with a single acoustic, bare nothing, exposed, and then ending with the most massive, over-the-top electric performance. So that's exactly what I did. Again, I'm not being forced, but Rick was literally just like, you have to put that out. He loves it. He just thinks it's a brilliant thing because it's heavy as hell, even though, again, it's 99% acoustic. The backing is all acoustic guitars, cajon. No kick, no snare. It's all a cajon, would you believe? Percussion. And he was just like, you have to put it out. It's brilliant. I'm going to be honest. I'm like, it was a scratch track performance. It's not I would have re-recorded it. I'm going to make excuses for myself. It's just because of the strings I had on there with like 12s and like I don't like my vibrato on it. All that kind of things. So I had so many issues with it. But he's just like, put it out there, come on. And I'm like, all right, why not? And you know what? It was the original intent. And why not put it out? It doesn't have to be perfect, so long as I'm reasonably happy with it. But it does make a great end to the album, and it's a nod to the heroes, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin, pretty much. And the reason I did it was, again, all these covered versions had come out, and I was always disappointed with all of them. I remember hearing the rapper P. Diddy, I think, bit controversial now, but he did a version for Godzilla, I think, the film, and Jimmy Page played on it, I'm sure. And I just remember thinking, oh God, it should be heavier. Come on, it should be heavier. So we just made it heavy as and that's what we did to end the album. A nod to my heroes, but also just play it like it should be heavy as So the condition with listening to this is you just have to promise me you crank it up as loud as you possibly can and make sure your head bangs so hard that you actually give yourself a readjustment. No need for chiropractors. You just put this track on. Oh, there you go. I feel better. So that's it. It's a close to the album. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy. Now make sure come on, turn your speakers up. You better not be listening to it through an iPhone speaker. Sacrilege. Disgrace. Crank it up as loud as possible and annoy everyone. Thank you. there you go. There you have it. That's the album done. Bit of what a way to end compared to how I started, eh? You know, proper punch in the face. That's what it's all about. I just want to give some real special thanks and look forward to the future. First of all, thank you to everyone who helped with the album. Most importantly, my friend Ian, who helped support actually make the project happen. Ian and Shard, my immediate friends and family. But big thank you to the producer extraordinaire, Mr. Aaron Taylor-Dean. Thank you very much. Who's a world famous producer nowadays. But back when we did this, he was it was a very, very small project. It was just he and I literally did this in his studio, and it wouldn't sound like it is without his actual, not only direction, but his expertise, which is why he works with the artists he does nowadays. But a big thank you to Aaron. As for the players who featured, a big thank you to everyone. Not only, obviously Brett Garsed, Paul Gilbert, Hank Marvin, Stian Carstensen, Michael Paouris, Pete Lesperance, Brett Garsed, everyone who I've already talked about. Thank you so much for appearing on it. But we also have some other musicians who really helped make it happen. First one is Derek Jones, bass player extraordinaire. Again, another real close friend of mine, monstrous musician, bass player. First met him out in Las Vegas. He played with Cirque du Soleil. He still does. Performs every night, on the Strip with a Cirque du Soleil show. Monstrous player. But famous for being with Nickel Creek and Jerry Douglas and being a session player. Just absolute monster. But he featured on Kashmir there and, with the bow, and also is just badass bass playing in general. So thank you so much for that. I've got to give a little shout out to my buddy, Lewis Dickinson. Okay, I'll talk about him a lot in the future, but he did actually play rhythm guitar on every track bar, I think the Vivaldi one and Reunited. And monster. I want to say, he's a student of mine. I taught him everything, and that's not true. He's gone on to be an absolutely monstrous musician, producer, engineer, guitarist, professional. And I'll talk about him some other. I don't want to give him too much praise because he'll watch this, but he is possibly my proudest musical achievement, if I can say that fact that I got him started and he's gone on to do what he does and performs like he does. Oh, that's enough. I'm not saying anything else nice. Forget it. So Aaron, Ian Ashard, Derek Jones, Lewis, Sammy Sowler, who helped with percussion and the orchestration, the living legend that is Chris Nugent. Hey, Chris played the cajon and some extra percussion. And again, what a performance, considering he's literally sat on a box and he gets the sound out of it and the feel out of it like he does, especially in the hypertension when you get towards the end of the song and you've got his and he threw some accents in there as well, which I heard back and I was like, I'm going to make that sound like it's my idea by hitting accents on arpeggios and stuff, but it was all Chris. So again, thank you so much for that. Unfortunately, there was a group of guys. One day, maybe in the future, I'll get together with Aaron and we'll make sure I can remember Gordon. I'm sorry, it was Gordon something. I'm so sorry. Who did beautiful percussion on Reunited, but he's a friend of Aaron's, and I really apologise. And we had some beautiful vocalists, a small choir, two ladies and a guy who did the background vocals for Heart of Elann and All I Have, and it really did make the track. But again, in the future, I'll talk a lot more about it because I'm going to explain a lot of it and break down solos and show the techniques and stuff in my method, darling. Which, if you want to support, you can have a look in the there's a subscription link in the links. Whatever it's called. I don't know, do I? I'm not a YouTube guy. Come on, whatever. There's a link in the description. Whatever. Thank you for your support. And with this support, we will take over the world and I'll keep going. But looking forward, actually, I'll just say, again. So thanks to all those guys. Big thanks to Adrian Vandenberg, whose idea it was in the first place, even though he didn't play on it. But I'll get him next time. And Rick Graham for forcing me to put it out, along with Tim Pierce, again, the legend that is Tim Pierce, very, 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 very supportive and encouraging. And I have to say, unfortunately, the biggest thanks probably to Mr. Chris Watkins over there. who's my partner in crime with this whole thing, and pretty much is his idea. Are you putting yourself on camera? No? Oh, okay. He's just sitting over there doing his job. Good. Yeah, good. Shut up. You're not allowed to speak. I don't pay you to speak. Don't pay you at all. Yeah. When we make a load of money, then you might get paid, but I'll dock your wages. But it's his. This is the reason I'm here, is because Chris is not forcing me. He's very politely strong-arming me to do this, because if it was up to me, I'd sit in the corner with the lights off and not speak to anyone. Okay, let's be honest here. I'm an absolute head case. But biggest thanks to you, Chris, because that's why we're pushing forward here, and everyone else, everyone who's being helpful and supporting with the reignition of my musical career. So, for any of you who've actually stayed and listened to this whole thing, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? Why are you still here? Thank you. So yes, like and subscribe and all that, and go and support me and join my Method Academy when it goes live November 1st. And who knows, we'll be out there this time next year. Rick and I will have another album on the go, along with, I'm going to do another a proper solo album, but probably more electric based. And then who knows from there. But the future is bright. Let's all put the sunglasses on. Oh, I haven't got them, just squint. All right, thank you so much, and here's to the future, and share it with everyone if you don't mind. Share this album with everyone. It doesn't matter if they hate it, just share it anyway. I'd rather them hate it than never hear it. Thank you so much, and see you next week.